Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. My endless series on ancient Anubis. But just to review here, for people who are new to the Anubis as this original Sphinx theory, this is something I read about 4 years ago. And when I first heard about this, I thought, gee, that's kind of silly. A dog, really? It's a lion. It faces Leo. I was sold on the Graham Hancock theory. But it's always been a mystery. There's been many theories and no solid answers whatsoever. So this is something I investigated. Really, I've been investigating for 4 years. Looking at the text and the monuments and the art and the symbolism and the anthropomorphic gods and everything, really. If you just look at everything from the earliest Egyptians, what they say about this great monument, it is clear. There is not one mention of a lion guarding the sacred necropolis of Rostau, the ancient name for Giza. And when I looked into Anubis, I was very surprised that really everybody that was knowledgeable about ancient Egypt said Anubis was the original god of Rostau before Osiris, and this seemed to change. Osiris became the main god roughly around the 5th dynasty, somewhere in that area, around 4,500 years ago, or a little less than that. So what's clear is when gods change, they are destroyed. Even consecutive pharaohs who are in the same family sometimes destroy monuments and art of the previous pharaoh. So there was a period when I believe this was just buried, and all there was on the head was a disfigured stump maybe. And then I think somebody in the 18th dynasty, Tutmosis IV, carved his face on here. Why do I say that? Because he had motive, opportunity. He made up the story that is on the dream stela that we still have between the paws of the Sphinx today. But there's just a great mystery. The original god of Giza was Anubis. That is a Greek name. That's the name we are most familiar with. That is the one I use. But Anubis was the original god of Giza, so you put your original god in monument form. That just made total sense to me. And I realized that history really changed when the Greeks came in about 2,300 years ago. And kind of the history gets rewritten, and the Horus statues of Amenhotep III now become the Colossus of Memnon, a totally Greek thing. Thoth becomes Hermes, and a dog becomes a cat. That was clear to me. History was changed by the Greeks. If you would have called this monument a Sphinx, throughout most of Egyptian dynastic history, they would have said, "What? Are you serious?" So, the original form of this was ancient Anubis, and I just kept on making videos of all the evidence I found, and I'll leave a playlist below. And it was clear to me that this was the correct answer when I found in the ancient text the name of this temple we call the Sphinx today. And it is called the Temple of Tep-2F, which is translated to Anubis on his hill. That's what the earliest Egyptians called this temple. It was never a lion. The only alignment is to the spring equinox sunrise. And this does not debunk Graham Hancock's theory of 10,500 BC, because the alignment of the pyramids and the alignment of the Nile is enough. And I love Mr. Hancock's work, and I wouldn't be doing ancient history videos if I had not read his books, Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods. So, this is nothing anti-Graham Hancock. His theory is still out there, and this does not debunk it, and that's not what I am trying to do. And all of the ancient texts I read, it was clear what they were saying. In a lot of the ancient texts, the Book of the Dead, I read it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just a bunch of words to me. It was so hard to, just little pieces, you kind of have a clue what they meant. And then I read it recently when I have been looking into this and immersing myself into symbolism and how they wrote and how they thought and everything. And the one thing I thought was very important is in the tomb of King Tut, the only intact tomb of a pharaoh where the most important afterlife religious information is going to be put and inscribed. What did they find there? They found Anubis sitting on a box coffin or ark, and it says Anubis, who was on the box coffin of Orion and guarding the gates of heaven. And that is so key because that perfectly describes this monument guarding the pyramids in alignment with Orion's belt. And he is down in a pit and on top of something. My Sphinx cover-up video showed this monument is actually on top of something here because there are corners in that ancient, or in that 1800s diagram, and there are stairs coming down. So he is on top of something and he is down in a pit. Perfect dual symbolism for a coffin. This is Anubis on the box coffin of Orion. Now this original monument, carved out of a natural piece of the earth, invoked so much terror in people because they saw him perched at the edge of deserts, these dogs. They saw him digging up freshly buried bodies, eating their intestines. It was the perfect watchdog. It was the original watchdog. Ancient text, art, everything says it was Anubis. And it was the Lord of Terror. It was the guide to the afterlife, the one you have to reckon with Horus. In that stage where you try to become an imperishable spirit. Now let's read. Now this is the Papyrus of Ani. And this is included in the book of Coming Forth by Day. And clearly, some parts of this are really the knowledge of ancient text. And this was copied, I think, about 200 years ago, maybe. It was recopied from earlier text. And the chapter here, it talks about the house of Osiris. And clearly, we are at Giza here. Now it says this in the Papyrus of Ani, and this is the chapter, the devourer of the block of slaughter. And clearly we are Giza. It talks about the house of Osiris, the great house. And that is a reference to the Great Pyramid in early text, the great house. And let me just read here. It asks the question, who are those? And this is just a question of this original god of Giza. And it kind of goes like a riddle. It says, who are those who preside over their altars? Those who preside over the altars are the similitude of the eye of Ra and the similitude of the eye of Horus. O Ra Tem, thou Lord of the great house, thou sovereign of all the gods, deliver thou the scribe Nebseni, whose word is truth, from the god whose face is like unto that of a greyhound, whose brows are like those of a man, who feedeth upon the dead, who watcheth at the bend of the lake of fire, who devoureth the bodies of the dead, and swalloweth the hearts, and who voideth filth, but who himself remaineth unseen. Who is this greyhound-faced god? His name is Everlasting Devourer, and he liveth in the domain of fire, or the lake of Und. As concerning the domain of fire, it is that At which is in Nerutef, and is near the Shenu chamber. The sinner who walketh over this place falleth down among the knives of the watchers. And who are the watchers? They are Horus and Anubis, identified in the previous chapter. Others, however, say that the name of this god is Matus and that he keepeth watch over the door of Amentet. Others say that his name is Beba, and that he keepeth watch over the bend of the stream of Amentet. And yet others say that his name is Harisepet. Hail, Lord of Terror, Chief of the lands, south and north, thou Lord of the desert, who dost keep prepared the block of slaughter, who dost feed on the intestines of men. Who is the Lord of Terror? Well, let's go on here. It is the keeper of the bend of the stream of Amentet. Who is this keeper? It is the heart of Osiris, which is the devourer of all slaughtered things. The earth crown hath been given unto him with the gladness of heart, as Lord of Hensu. Who is this? He to whom the earth crown hath been given with the gladness of heart, as Lord of Hensu, is Osiris. He was hidden to rule among the gods of the day of the union of earth with earth, in the presence of Nebuchadnezzar. Who is this? He who is bidden to rule among the gods is the son of Isis, of Horus, who was appointed to rule in the room of his father, Osiris. As concerning the words day of the union of earth with earth, they have reference to the union of earth with earth in the coffin of Osiris, the soul that liveth in Hensu, the giver of meat and drink, the destroyer of wrong, and the guide to everlasting paths. So, in review, seems we have a great greyhound-faced god that was the god of the desert, the one who ruled over the afterlife. He was guardian of the pathways, and I talked about those being the causeways. He was the guardian of the bend of the lake, or the bend of the stream. What else do we know? Well, seems he guarded something that was symbolic of maybe sinners. They would fall into the Senu chamber. We have Campbell's tomb right here. That seems to be what they are talking about. The chamber that if you are a sinner you fall into, clearly described. Also, the guardian of the door of Amentet, the underworld. This is all making sense. It is clear. He is also everlasting devourer, who feeds on the intestines of men. He is everlasting. This monument will always be here. And feeding on the intestines of men is a clear reference to these jackals, or these dogs that guarded the desert. And where does this great god lay when he was crowned? According to the earliest Egyptians, in the box coffin of Osiris, or Orion. Exactly what I told you in my symbolism video. When I read that, I smiled. And he was crowned, or made to rule, on the day of the union of earth with earth. This great monument is carved out of the natural mound. The day of the union of earth with earth is one of the most eloquent ways I've heard described how this Sphinx is built. He presides over the altar in front of the great house of Osiris. The very earliest Egyptians are telling you exactly what this great monument is. And I'm glad to relay this information. Hope you thought this was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.